Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Talking Cloud. My name's Grant Asplund. I'm here with my expert, brilliant co-host, Patrick Pusher. How are you, Patrick?
Doing awesome, buddy. How are you?
Good, man. It's great to see you. I'm so excited about this week's episode.
Me too.
We're going to have an awesome guest. It's going to be really, really terrific. But I want to let's just jump in and get into the newsroom because I think there's some interesting things we can talk about. So
sounds good. Let's do it.
The first thing talk about job security, man. I mean, can you believe it? The forecast for cloud security is compound annual growth rate of 18.1% for 7 years, 22 to 29. That is just off the hook.
Yeah, staggering. It really is.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, you know, what I guess for me, what's so amazing is this is cloud security, Patrick. This is not
security,
anything else. This is cloud security. I think it just really, really shows it's off the hook. And you can see some of the data. I think you can read, that 33.13 billion is what it's forecast to be this calendar year. I mean, that's pretty good size TAM if I'm building a new product. But what I think it also speaks to is how fast moving and how many new startups do you hear about?
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing that's just really remarkable is the number of new startups. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but you wonder how much that market can sustain, right? But then you see when the market grows at that rate, kind of for sure, right? And I agree. It's likely
it's like our own universe expanding.
Yeah.
It's getting bigger.
And I think it's likely sort of two phenomenon. You spoke about the rate of people moving to the cloud. That's certainly, I think, the biggest factor. The second one is likely the maturity of those their understanding, right? As they use more and more cloud native conventions in their app architecture, they understand how hard it is to secure them, right?
Totally. And this, if there's an example of why the growth in the market is so great, is first ever Denonia. It's named after the domain that it actually uses to communicate, but first malware ever targeting AWS. Pretty amazing, written in Go.
Lambda, yeah.
This is amazing. CryptoMiner, I think, is what it is. And I was reading this, and honestly, I went, "Dope!" Like they were quoting, Homer Simpson. But of course, there's an acronym for everything: DNS over HTTPS. But that's really fascinating because it obfuscates that critical resolution, if you will, that has to occur for the communications, right? I mean, people, I thought that was really interesting that, when you're passing DNS over HTTPS, if you're not inspecting your HTTPS traffic, you're at risk to this one, right?
Yeah, that's right. And DNS, especially like cloud-hosted DNS, is one of those vectors. I think even in our intro episode last week, I said it. If you know enough about the cloud environment, you don't even need the network, right? And so if you're hosting your DNS on your public infrastructure as a service provider, AWS for example, right? If I have credentials that allow me, as a bad actor, if I have credentials that allow me to log in with enough power to manipulate your DNS, right? I can do crazy things. It is insane how much of a threat vector name resolution kind of really is, right? You can send people who think they're doing the right thing to password harvesting websites, right? So it's really, really critical.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, I just find it fascinating that, how I managed to fall into this whole space called security was in the early part of 1998 when Check Point acquired the first company on the planet that ported Bind to Windows and made Windows DNS.
Sure.
This was, 95, 96. MetaInfo was that company. But it's remarkable to me how really, kudos to Gil and Shlomo and Check Point on that vision of understanding, hey, we've got dynamic DNS now and DHCP. If we could somehow tie that into the Active Directory and the host name that's assigned, now I can start to build policy that source is Grant, destination is Patrick, instead of the proverbial 1.2.3.4.
That's right.
But of
identities, right? Identities.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we'll move on to my last story that I wanted to mention. Gartner's kind of put together their what you really should be focused on in 2022. They've identified what they say are the top risk issues, and I just thought it was interesting. Expanding attack surface, we all know that.
Yeah, we just talked about
more than
one of those, right? In Lambda malware, boy, there's a brand new attack surface. We have users super concerned and vendors salivating, right? Here's something else I can kind of solve.
Exactly, which, is very much the second bullet. The solar winds introduced us, and then the multiple other examples of how critical our own supply chain, our own software development life cycle is to checking and securing. And they've got that one, number 2. Number 3, this one, Patrick, we both really believe strongly in, but the world of identity. It is going to become such a huge issue in the cloud as everything shifts to based on identity, right?
Yeah.
Because everything has an identity.
Everything has an identity, and there's a whole lot more of everything when we think about microservices, right? Our apps have to be super agile, and they have to withstand downtime. So we write these pockets of services that communicate with each other, and that just the proliferation of identities is incredible. So yeah, that's not a surprise to see there at all.
This is interesting how they're saying distributing the decisions, which I think that's a good thing to try to make sure the entire organization really understands the critical importance of security, right?
Yeah. A lot of data security standards focused on doing just that, making sure the policies are kind of organization-wide, for sure.
Yeah, of course, we know important to teach your users more than just be aware. Vendor consolidation, I thought, was really an interesting one, Patrick, because, boy, this one is so contrary to what has been the modus operandi for the last several years. Arguably the last couple of decades, right? Best of breed, best of breed, best of breed. And now, because the attackers are ahead of us and understand, the left hand's not talking to the right hand or similar, they can figure out how to exploit it. So it's really, I think, a great opportunity for vendors, especially the big behemoths, to really tighten their laces across their entire portfolio and demonstrate that. I think there's some real value. I think Check Point's, frankly, if I do say so myself, in a really good position there with their Infinity architecture. I thought that one was interesting. And then, the ever-present cybersecurity mesh. I thought it was funny. Wasn't it you that made a comment about, they make it sound so simple and easy, but it is anything and far from that.
For sure. There was a dedicated article about that mesh somewhere, and it doesn't matter who wrote it or where it lives. But yeah, I think the opening statement was, as long as you have this, you'll be almost guaranteed great access policy. It's like, oh my Lord. It's no wonder we're lost, especially when it comes to identity with vendors and solution providers saying things like that, right? It's a tough complex, multi-angled problem, right? One of the things that you chatted about that I want to talk a little bit about, right, was now we have this new threat vector of Lambda vulnerabilities, something that no doubt will start a bit of a fear, uncertainty, and doubt campaign, right? But at the same time, we have Lambda expanding in how it's used, right? And making it easier to trigger those Lambda functions from places inside your app, places outside of AWS. So I guess AWS has introduced some new functionality around Lambda function URLs in the last couple of weeks. And really the only point is, we're expanding the use of Lambda. It's not just us as practitioners who see the value. Obviously, as we lean on it more and more, we have bad actors who, are going to do the same. It's a hugely powerful. I mean, if you read the article that you shared, they actually took that code run by Lambda, ran it in a Linux instance, right, with the stack built and simulated the problem. And so, yeah, I mean, functions as a service or only as a service to us. They still run in an engine in our cloud provider. That's still vulnerable, right? So this is a vector we're going to have to think about, especially as we rely on it more and more, for sure.
Yeah. And this, I think it just totally epitomizes what will continue to happen, meaning there are going to be exciting new innovations on the tech side, and the bad guys are going to noodle and look at it in ways we don't and figure out how to do something nefarious with it.
Always.
It's that.
Always.
I mean, cat and mouse, back and forth, back and forth.
That's right. That's why in security, we never make statements that say things like, we guarantee, right? Because they're necessarily untrue. Yeah, always. Yeah, that's exactly. Right. And hey, here's a really good example of that, because we've come to lean on multi-factor authentication as this panacea of proving your identity. But we're finding out that bad actors are one step ahead of us again, right? And I thought this was really, really important. If you haven't kind of heard the most basic versions of multi-factor authentication, and those include sort of notifications to another device, right? You're trying to log in to your security platform of choice. It tries to send you a notification via an app on your mobile phone, for example. Those are relatively easy for bad actors to sort of even trigger legitimately. And a lot of those, and I'm not including CSPs in this bucket, but a lot of them don't have tight enough controls. If you read this article and they introduce this concept called MFA bombing, a lot of those service provider MFA triggers don't really have a lot of controls around them. So what this group actually does is they take over your account. They try to do a reset password, for example. That sets off the MFA to you via some channel, and they will spam that. And worse, the platform will allow them to do that. And they'll do it at strategic times. They know, like in North America, you'll be sleeping. They'll do it at 2 a.m. So they know, you'll wake up in a stupor. You'll have 50 notifications.
Don't have your glasses on.
Yeah, you'll say yes to one of them, right? So it's like a combination of social engineering and really bad Gen 1 MFA support by the service providers themselves. They're coaching, use methods that are a little more robust, that are proven, that are, on the same device, but are multi-factor. There's a lot of advice in here, but I think the takeaway is Gen 1 multi-factor isn't enough anymore. So, we'll probably solve that by combination of user education and, better tech to the point you just made, for sure.
I was reading where, a lot of times you're talking about even just in the clear, right? Text, an SMS or iMessage, right? That gets used frequently. Enter in this code, but I could certainly see how the bad guys could exploit that, right?
Oh, for sure. That. Yeah, SMS is terrible. There's not only is it clear text, it's so trivial to spoof the origin that, for sure that one, the clear text MFA SMS channel should almost not exist anymore, in my opinion, for sure. It's too easy.
Well, amazing stuff happening. And boy, I guess the thing we know for sure, brother, is we got some job security for a while, because there's no end in sight. There's no end in sight.
That's right.
So, hey, we got to go and meet our next guest.
We do.
And boy, this week, pretty let me just say, if you know the sounds of a grandfather clock, you'll know the company, TikTok. It's really cool. We've got Roland joining us this week, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's go meet him. So we're thrilled and excited to have the Global Chief Security Officer from TikTok, Roland Cloutier. Roland, great to have you, man. Thank you so much for being on Talking Cloud.
Hey, Grant, thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it. This
man.
It's always a fun one, man.
So, gosh, you're a busy guy doing lots of stuff. I think you've seen the questions that I got all okayed by Maureen and the gang, so we weren't going to ask you anything too private. Of course, you're welcome to talk about and take the conversation any way you want. I just got through giving the proverbial Reader's Digest list of your career starting from U.S. government. So I kind of rattled all that off. I don't know if there's anything you want to add for Z-axis, or if we want to just go dive into
jump right into it.
Yeah,
let's
baby.
Just hit it. Yeah.
So what I'm curious, I mean, there's no more cloud native, cloud pure company on the planet. So I'm thinking you're somebody who I'd love to know, are you seeing any interesting cloud security trends or movements or directions that are unique in any way? What's going on in cloud security?
Yeah, so Graham, I think in general, the end user spending on cloud management and security services are just way on the rise, right? I mean, I think in every area, including government, which is a telling sign. If you think about when you think about FedRAMP and everything that was happening in that area, the use of cloud in that adoption was minor. But, the reality is that they're really embracing that as an internal and an external mechanism. So it's really demonstrating kind of the maturity of cloud platforms in themselves and the trust that people are putting into it. I think what we're also seeing, so we're cloud native, so predominantly everything we do is built into our cloud environments. But what we're seeing from partners and other people in the industry is really a hybrid and multi-cloud environment. For instance, we have our own internal clouds. We partner with other clouds for certain things. And I think what you see is even enterprise organizations using multi-cloud capabilities for either specific technical reasons and or for redundancy, high availability, globality, things of that nature. Yeah. I saw, I recently saw this survey, and it was a crazy number. It was like from CIOs or IT leaders, like 95% said making multi-cloud is a strategic priority, not just something they're being told to do or a requirement, but it's a strategic priority. So, yeah, I think we're starting to see the uptick on attacks on cloud as well over the last couple of years. So it's here. It's here in a big way. Yeah.
So I need to apologize profusely for not appropriately and properly introducing you to my expert co-host. Now, you've heard me talk about on this podcast where I always say I'm no expert, but I know where to find them. And I decided instead of always casting that to the wind, I'm going to just bring one along with me. So I want you to meet Patrick Pusher. Patrick is, I don't know, what was it, 2012 when you got into cloud, or was it before that?
Yeah, but ish. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Roland,
So,
it's a pleasure, Roland. How are you?
Patrick.
I
Nice
just,
to meet you, man.
because Patrick and I are going to kind of volley some of these questions back and forth, but I just felt like, shit, I didn't do a very good job introducing him at the front end, so shame on me.
No problem.
Poor hosting technique by it.
That's okay.
Come on.
You got Patrick as a backup, so.
That's right.
That's right. Well, hey, now I'll take the reins and maybe just piggyback off of what maybe one of the things you just said, Roland. You mentioned you're definitely a cloud first organization, but you've got multiple environments. What's it like to, when you've got a new initiative, new piece of technology, whatever it is, what is some of that decision-making criteria, right? Do you take it to your main public platform? Do you take it to somewhere else? I mean, I imagine it's a mixture of cost, risk, performance, right? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it is the discussion of buy versus build. I mean, we're one of the largest and fastest growing technology companies and cloud companies in the globe in general. So we have to think about things like capabilities at scale, availability and capability to interact with our custom design stack. So we start our kind of a review with buy versus build. I think we also are fortunate enough we have some incredible talent on the technology and infrastructure side of the TikTok engineering organization. So we often have an opportunity to throw thousands of engineers at a problem very quickly to solve it. So I think predominantly we look at, can we use a system that meets our time to market needs, that meets the scalability needs, and then we go into kind of the normal, risk-based third-party review on how we're going to accomplish this.
Sure.
So, Roland, I'm curious. I mean, you're a very progressive, innovative company, and I'm sure even outside of the engineering group, you've got a lot of real technical, smart people. So my question is shadow IT a problem? I mean, do those other groups that aren't within your organization get impatient and want to run out and try to build their own or come up with their own solution? And I mean, is that a problem? And how do you really keep a hold or control on that?
Yeah,
I mean, everything's just a credit card away, right?
Yeah, I mean well, I mean, we are a cloud, right? If you think about the cloud infrastructures we own and manage, they're simply massive. So I have less of a problem, I think, than a lot of my peers because simply we have it here. People don't need to go to AWS or GCP or Azure to set it up. Our environment is that environment. So our teams provide a lot of support to the entirety of the organization, but they don't have to go through us from a shared service model to embrace the cloud development organization. And our platform's really, really highly specialized. If you think about it, we have our own stack, we have our own codecs, we have our own networking and SDN infrastructure. That is all our own proprietary code. So connecting and deploying the right people with the right technology and tools is done fairly easy inside with all of the automation we have for that. Even and they don't even let me next to consoles anymore, right? But even I could very easily go up and stand up an instance necessary in one of our cloud environments to test the functionality. I was doing something recently with our forensics team. I wanted to see how we could, potentially do, essentially a joint collection capability in different geos for regionalization. I was able to select locations, what I needed. Self-built. I mean, it's getting so easy. Even people like me can do it internally. Wow. And we have these, cloud and shared operational tools that we provide or our IT partners provide as standard tooling. Like you come in, you get a laptop, you get your email, you get access to the our internal tooling, and poof, you can do it. So it's pretty good. We don't even think of it as rogue IT or shadow IT. The reality is everyone in here can develop. Everyone in here can innovate. Everyone should have access to the technology. And so we just control the environment and give them onboarding paths to do that.
Yeah, you guys are your own biodome. It's your own kind of enclosed environment, right?
Yeah, I like that concept. I'm going to use that next week. Okay,
you can. Just give me a little credit once in a while. When you're wearing that piss T-shirt.
Perfect.
That's right. But part of that, I wonder, Roland, is part of the motivation for automating so much. We hear so much about the skills gap, being able to find, enough of the sort of skilled cloud-specific, cloud-native DevOps engineering, DevSecOps, right? Is part of the motivation to automate so much, to have the tools do more in the face of, not having enough of a line on qualified, people at scale. I understand we're talking about an organization, a technology organization here, unlike most, for sure.
Yeah, I think I think the skills gap is a different question. I'd love to actually dive into that. That's a large thing that I'm focusing on right now. But no, you know what? I think it's guardrails. I think it's the ability to do things at speed within guardrails. So we create the tools to allow the river to run inside the banks without spilling over. But having high enough banks to be able to go where it needs to go when it rains and when the snow melts, so to speak. So it enables us to do things like configuration assurance, our by design process. So security by design and privacy by design, right? Most people call it SDLC. We call it by design. But when people are moving between, say, dev, QA, post QA, and then hosting environments or prod environments, we have specialized checks that make sure that code is part of an approved project and program that has been through the by design, and that those controls were implemented. And if not, it gets sent back. So putting checks and balances and gate through the automation allows for people to do great and crazy things, but keeping them on the right path and ensuring that there is opportunities to steer people back maybe when they start to go outside the bank. So I think that's how the automation really helps us. But you're not wrong when you say, is there a skill gap in the industry in general? Because people are the foundation of any organization. I don't care if you're high tech, an app or what. When you don't have the right skills or the right practitioners, it's difficult to execute your mission space.
Let's pull on that a little bit. I mean, you said that was something you wanted to talk about, and you're really interested in skills gap. I mean, we've heard that I've been hearing it now for, I'd say, probably the last at least 2 years. It's been a real loud drumbeat, but I would argue even longer, right?
Yeah.
And it just seems like it continues to be a problem. So how do we narrow the gap? Because I don't think it's possible to close it, not anytime soon. I mean, it is possible, obviously, but it's just how long is it going to take, right?
Yeah, we should have done a whole session just on this. But let me see if I can distill it down to the few things that we're doing. First is you really have to define people's jobs, right? We start with typical job families, what their jobs are, but we've actually hired people that are solely focused on what we call practitioner enablement, right? There's an executive on my leadership team. Their job is called practitioner enablement. And part of their programs that they deliver for our teams is to make sure that people have paths. They know where they want to go. And whether it's in their IDPs or whether it's in, I want to be a CISO someday, or, I want to be a CEO. What is our path in the time that we have them to get them there, to engage them and give them a meaningful experience? Part of that is the training and upskilling opportunities we have to give as an organization. So how do you carve that out? How do you make that part of your P&L, part of the time-based management of your organization? So how do we partner with outside organizations specifically to invest in our people? And I think our people have the ability to do anything if you hire the right folks that are mission focused, want to be doing this type of work, and you give them those tools. So I think, we always say, come here, you can build a career here. You don't have to be just in risk management. You don't have to be just in cloud ops. You just don't have to be in any specific area. You want to be a forensic CSI specialist in a couple of years? Let's get you on that path. So we offer really this wide range of critical infrastructure training, data defense, access assurance, anti-fraud, all of these different programs. We invite people to come in and extend their careers based on the programs we have in place. I mean, think about it. You can go from cyber defensive operations to over-the-horizon threat monitoring and threat intel within a couple of years. And I think that's what makes our company special, and other companies that are doing this as well. Every day is a new challenge because we're building this capability with our team. we're going to continue to build the disciplines we have based on where the world's going, threat impacts to our environment, and where the technologies go. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that a large part of my organization would have been an intelligence group 5-10 years ago. Did we need threat intel? Absolutely. Was it threat-led defense as a way of how we address controls and our risk? Yeah. But as a large integral part of a multidisciplinary threat intel group, I would not have imagined it would have been so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the world is definitely continuing to change. I think it's interesting, and what you speak to is the critical importance of kind of making sure I have a purpose, right? I mean, it's like I have a direction, I have a goal, I have some things I want to accomplish, and I think that's a hallmark of a great employer, right? That they provide that for you.
Yeah, I'm curious, Patrick. Don't mean to be the questioner or the question answer asking questions, but how do you see it as a practitioner? You're a senior guy. You've been in the industry a long time. What gets you up in the morning to go do this every day?
It's a good question, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking the challenge is even wider in this sort of necessarily remote kind of COVID and post-COVID era, right? It's changed for me. What got me up in the morning a lot of time was engaging, with customers, with people using technology directly. Of course, we did that very oftentimes. I'm way up here in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, right? So for me, it's always necessarily remote, but a big part of that was the human contact too, right? And now we're not only trying to find all those skilled people, we're trying to train them, retain them, make them feel super valued necessarily at a distance. I mean, it's challenging. I know, I'm in the business of building small startup, from nothing companies, and there's a massive difference. It couldn't have been easy at TikTok, right? Certainly,
no.
Not only do you have the remote employee challenge, you potentially have the, even more rapid growth of TikTok, given the fact that everyone's on their phone almost, 100% of the time in this era, right? So you've got it from both sides.
Yeah, I think what we've been able to do that is important is in our we have a really cool hiring process, and some people think it's torturous, other people think it's the best thing since sliced bread. I'm on that sliced bread kind of side of things because it gives us the opportunity to dig deep, right? You could have someone that says, hey, I like the TikTok swag, and I'd like TikTok sneakers. I'd like to go work there, and I'm really good at it, at what I do. Or you could have someone come in the door that says, you guys have 1 billion people that use that platform. My kid is on that platform or will be on that platform. I want to protect it, right? That's the person I want. That's the person that gets that I have, the responsibility to protect the last sunniest corner of the internet, that I have 1 billion users around the globe that depend on this platform for them to be themselves, for us to deliver happiness, like in seeing in that and going, yeah, that's something I want to get up and go, fight for every day. And making sure that you're hiring through the process in any of those jobs to make sure they're essentially mission-centric individuals. And so we take the time to do that, and that's how we keep kind of that succinct capability.
Well, and I think what that also does, Roland, is, the proverbial Groundhog's Day that so many people in the security world feel they go through, right? With our spam is alerts, so it's looking at consoles, looking at alerts, and I get up and do it again tomorrow. I mean, that's how organizations that aren't sensitive to the need for accommodating what I'm about as opposed to what you want done, because that's, I think, what's different, right? You're focused on me. As opposed to looking at the business and saying we need to get this data from my employees. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think people want to know. I think especially in our career fields, right, guys? So like security, risk, and privacy people, they do this for a reason. It's not because it's like you become a cop for a reason. You go into the military for a reason. And I think when you're in this job, you want to know, and in many other careers too, that what you do counts. What you do, it matters.
Sure.
And so you have to, as leadership, we have to show to them how it matters. We have to be transparent as we are to our outside customers and partners and users on the platform. We have to have that transparency inside. It's why I do silly TikTok videos. It's why I do every month global all hands. It's why I do, updates, video updates I send out to the whole team to keep them engaged, to let them know what they're doing, to let them know how they're impacting the company. Because without that, you can get into this, the blinders on, fog over you, coding away, doing
Drift.
operations, and you're like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And sometimes you need people to show you what you're doing here.
Yeah, and boy, I think to Patrick's point, in this era of COVID, especially, it's easy to get untethered and feel adrift and not really connected, right, Patrick?
That's right. Sort of a lack of trust, almost like zero trust. How's that for a segue?
Oh no, zero trust. Can it happen?
Well, yeah. I mean, boy, if cloud was a mismarketed term back when it first came on, the scene, zero trust is the current one, right? And it aspires to be something that's theoretically great. In practice, you wonder just how far you can sort of go on this continuum of, no trust. But I'm interested in your perspective for sure.
I think zero trust gets beat up a lot. Long live PKI. Just kidding. But on a serious note, it doesn't matter if you instantiate it at a device level based on regionality or location, individual IDM, however you look at zero trust. I think validation and limiting your threat surface based on managing connections, regardless of where you are in your environment or your adjacencies, you create this capability to add that checkpoint, right? And I think that's super, super important. I think it is real. I think companies that can do it well, so you have a conglomerate of applications that equate to a product, but they, you only want them talking to specific services between devices. Like that's a minimal instance, right? That you can do tomorrow in your environment. I think when you think about data defense and access assurance, these privilege versus no privilege. So how do you instrument an environment to do platform capable revocation of IDM access, and then build in a managed process for access, through a very specific mechanism. I mean, it doesn't have to be all or nothing, and I think a lot of the people that poke at zero trust take the zero way too far. It should be.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it should be not a lot more than zero trust. It should be
as close as possible as you can. Right.
Exactly. He's never going to hit zero trust. But start. I think start somewhere. Start with your products or your collection of an application that's a deliverable service to as a product or internally, or you can start an infrastructure. Infrastructure talking to infrastructure. I mean, just start slowly and build it up, and it'll get there. But management is tough, right? Like this isn't let's do it in independent enclaves around the globe. This has to be done in a global managed fashion, and you have to have people that know how to do it and implement. And I'm not kidding about long live PKI, man.
Well, that's where those rails really help, right? They give those people the confidence that I'm not going to do something. I don't necessarily have to be an expert in security. If I'm, just proving a concept or something, I know that I can do it. Fairly relatively good confidence I can do it, right? Because I've got that wrapper, that TikTok approved wrapper around, and I think that's part of the guardrail story too, right? For sure.
Yeah, for sure, Patrick. I look at. Let me give you a simplistic version. Home firewalls or just Soho devices, right? A few years ago, a lot of the manufacturers came out with this capability for people to say, I use gaming, or I use this, or I use that. And it did its version of zero trust, essentially saying, I'm only going to allow these ports and protocols to this one device on the network. tell me which device. Is it the PS5 that's registered here on your wireless network? Yes. And so people, commercial entities, have gotten to the point where they're starting to embrace this as a part of product.
Right.
I mean, and if you think about how mobile devices work now from a privacy assurance perspective, and the things that both Apple and Google have done with, we're going to start with, we're not going to allow applications to do certain things. We are going to ask the user if they would like something to be added. Right? That's a form of zero trust. So as long as we all think about it in that way, I think it's a promising opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it's that all the way to, how many times do we, a security analyst, sort of read about a database tier of an application open to the world, right? It's that too. Why in the heck is your database should trust your application tier? There's that word again, right? Only. But of course, many hands in the kitchen, not starting from approved process, not starting, people. There are so many different levels of cloud and security maturity within a single organization, right? Across business units, across project teams. I mean, really, truly having that centrally, at least from a risk perspective, that centrally kind of managed top-down perspective, it does give the whole organization the confidence to innovate. I mean, from my perspective, for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Listen, if I don't have to worry about all that extra stuff and I pass my security checks, why wouldn't I embrace it?
Yeah. And I've got a portal I can go to anytime. I can spin up, anytime I have an idea or a concept. Then, to your point, what is shadow IT even really a concern? If a user can do anything they want in the approved way?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's, you're a very unique organization. That is not the norm, fair to say, right? I mean, most enterprises don't have that biodome environment to play in. So, I mean, it must. There's got to be some significant advantages. But do you feel like there's anything you're missing out on? Is there anything? Technology's changing so fast. I mean, do you ever feel like maybe, oh shoot, we should have looked at doing that earlier or something?
You run into bumps in the roads. I think when you're running as fast and hard as we are, you're like, oops, didn't see that coming. It's like it's anybody in the security business, right? The business is running at 200 miles an hour. You have people innovating on a daily basis, and they do something. You're like, wait, we can do what? Huh? We didn't think of that, right? Like, so you're going to have those issues.
Yeah.
I think the important part is how you embrace that as a win for the company rather than, we have a disaster, we have to go fix it. So how do you turn that in as incredible innovation, and now we get to innovate around security? I mean, think about security, I'm just selfish here, but, security risk and privacy, practitioners, same old, same standards, same framework, same this, same processes, right? Sometimes, we don't get to innovate, but when you're in a company that's creating new technology, new products, and you have to go solve hard problems, all of a sudden you're in the fight with the engineering groups. You're supporting their capability to go market fast, right? You can turn that around from, oh my God, they did it again, to, let's go do this. And so I don't see it as problematic. I see it as an opportunity to give our teams, alignment into the engineering organizations and the capability to really go discover new things and deliver cool security back to the market.
Very cool.
Well, Roland, we want to be respectful of your time, but I don't want to let you go until I ask you this, because it's something I think about a lot. What are your top three sort of, looking at 2022? It's a very, I don't know if it's a different landscape. It's a lot more obvious of a cybersecurity landscape this year, I think. Some of what's happened, I think, undertones, state-sponsored kind of stuff. There's, now a lot of us see it kind of on the evening news. My mom calls me about it, kind of thing. So, if not what all of us have dealt with, kind of always, at least now we're all thinking about it in the forefront. What are the top, let's say, 3 things in 2022 that risks that sort of have you concerned and that you're thinking about?
Wow, you're only giving me 3, huh? Let's see. Well, I know this is going to sound like motherhood and apple pie, but really staying ahead of the next generation threats. I mean, you think about blockchain defense. You think about advanced automation and the use of ML and attack methodology. You think of the potential of realistic AI as a service in bot farms. How do you defend against that, right? You've got to find it, use it, test it against your existing infrastructure and current control sets, and so this is why we've invested so much in that over the threat horizon intel capability, because it's so important, and you have to be able to do it at scale. The other one, and this is maybe just my area, but data defense and access assurance. You'll hear me talk in my sleep at night about that. With the globalization and changes specific to data sovereignty, to data regionalization, and to requirements just to operate in various environments without problematic issues specific to regulatory concerns or things of that nature.
Yep.
You have to lean in. You have to lean in hard and make sure that not only do you understand it, but you're implementing the capability. And in our case, that includes operations in many different jurisdictions around the world, where I think a lot of people used to do hub and spoke. That's not going to work. You have to have in-region capabilities. So how do you not only get data defense right and protect consumer data, but how do you do it in a way that it's acceptable with the jurisdictions you operate in? And I guess
everywhere,
everywhere. Right, like hundreds of countries, and I would say that the last thing that I really think about when we've really talked about it is right now in this year, the platform is scaling, the application is scaling, my workforce. I have 200 open positions right now, right? How do you enable that next generation workforce? Not just how you get them, right? You can get them. You can go out and find them. You can go to work fairs. You can do all of this cool stuff to get people. How do you keep them, right? How do you enable them, the people that are quite reasonably half my age, that are starting off in their new career, that you want to keep them more than 2 and 3 years? You want to invest in them and build them. So how do you enable that next generation workforce in so many different ways, right? So that'd be my third.
And I think that's a mystery. That's a tough nut to crack, that one.
Well, we're working on it.
There's no doubt. If you're working on it, you're going to get her done, Roland. I really appreciate you coming on and spending so much time with us today. It was awesome. Thank you very, very much. I was actually really glad that the 3 biggest concerns you had didn't include me calling you back to be on the program again. So,
Grant, anytime I get the opportunity, you're a fun guy to hang out with. So, thanks for it. And Patrick, great to meet you. And maybe at RSA or one of those wonderful places we can all get together.
That'd be awesome.
Sounds great.
That'd be awesome. Roland, thanks a ton, man. It's great seeing you, ladies and gentlemen. Roland Cloutier, Global Chief Security Officer for TikTok. Thanks again, man. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shira, the CEO of Solvo. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Solvo. So Solvo is a cloud security company that I started about 2 years ago with my co-founder, David. We both worked for another cloud security company, and during that time we realized that we are surrounded by a lot of awesome security products, But the common problem we always found is that those products are really good at telling you what you did wrong, or what kind of misconfiguration we found in your account, or what kind of anomalies we see in your account, but are not really good at actually helping you to fix that. The best thing we would see is products that in their notifications you have a hyperlink to the relevant documentation in the compliance framework or with the cloud provider. But when users get these kind of notifications, they are usually they have a lot of anxiety. They want to get that issue fixed, especially if it's very critical. And sending them to the documentation is not always what they need. They actually need a one-click solution that will make their environment least privileged, well configured, compliant. So that was our vision, and this is the idea behind Solvo. Solvo is a security product that doesn't only tell you what is wrong in the existing cloud infrastructure environment, but is also creating the relevant fix for you. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you today to show you what the product looks like. I'm extra happy to be here because we just recently launched a new feature, our compliance feature. I'll be showing that to you in just a few minutes. So let's get started with the product that is called IAM Magnifier. We realized that when you want to inspect your cloud environment, either for security purposes, for intrusion prevention, or just to prove your auditor that you don't have excessive permissions, this is a little tough. You would usually go to your AWS console and try to understand under IAM what kind of permissions you have, who have an access to this specific S3 bucket, and it gets really complicated and not easy to understand. So we wanted to create this one place for you to be able to ask all of these questions about a specific resource, or a specific kind of access, or a specific kind of action that can be executed in your account. And this is what it looks like. So in this case, I'm going to choose the environment I wish to inspect. I'm going to inspect my demo account. I would like to take a look at a specific resource. We're going to see other types of queries later. I can choose here a specific type of AWS service. Most popular ones are always S3, DynamoDB, but basically you can put in any ARN from your AWS account and inspect it the same way. So for this example, I'm going to look at S3. I'm going to pick one of my buckets. In this case, I will pick my CloudTrail bucket. I can then choose a specific filter of the access level. That means that I might want to just check who are the entities that can read an item out of this bucket, or can write into the bucket, and so on. I'm just going to leave all access level on for this demonstration, and let's see what it looks like. So I just click the search button, and I'm getting this really big and messy image of my cloud assets. But while it looks quite messy, this is actually very, very simple. On the right hand side, we're always going to see the type of resource I was asking a question about. In this case, it was an S3 bucket. And on the left hand side, I'm always going to see the resource that has access to the S3 bucket. In between, I'm going to have the roles and policies that enabled this access. But I know what you're saying. Well, this is a little messy. How can I understand what is going on with this specific bucket that you wanted to inspect? And this is why we have a few filters over here, making it really easy to look and focus on the relevant cloud assets. This enables us to understand the types of risks that are imposed on this specific resource. Again, in this case, we're looking at an S3 bucket. So I can look and understand what are the risks that have for this specific S3 bucket. For example, does it have access to the internet? Is it connected to a specific a AWS account. So I can see that this bucket is actually connected to a few AWS accounts. I can see them over here. I can see different accounts, and I can very easily understand if this access was relevant or not. You should be able to tell if your buckets are connected to an external account or not, and if that was necessary or not. In this case, this bucket is not widely open to the internet. If it would have been, then I would have seen here instead of 0 some other cloud assets. Some other nice filters I have here are AWS users. So I can easily see which users have any kind of access into this bucket. And if this is an excessive access that I did not intend for user number 2 to have, I can then go to the configuration page for that user and remove that specific access, or alternatively get the Solvo policy that is relevant for this user. So we can create different kinds of filters using the magnifier. I can also take a look at a specific action. There are many risky AWS actions. You can actually check out Solvo's website, see under our blog a blog that we wrote about risky AWS actions that very often go under the radar. One of them, or one that I would definitely recommend all of you to check out, is assume role, which is the way AWS enabled for us to connect to different AWS accounts or different entities connecting to different accounts. And in this case, I can see that there are a bunch of entities, including users, including an account, including a Lambda function that can execute the assume role action in my account. And this actually might be very risky and something I might want to prevent. So as I said before, in this case, I was taking a look at the Lambda function that can do this assume role, and later I'm going to show you how I remove this kind of excessive permission quite effortlessly, I must say. So this is the IAM magnifier, and it's available on our website right now. I would now want to jump to our compliance feature. This is a new feature that we recently released. We built it because we've been getting requests from our users saying that they need an easy way to understand how compliant or non-compliant their AWS or Azure accounts are. And this is why we created this little dashboard for them, showing them their AWS accounts and how compliant or not compliant they are, depending on the frameworks and rules that the users themselves set for each account. So in this case, we're just looking at the dashboard that I have for this account right now, and the specific frameworks that we chose to run and check. Once you have activated the rules, you don't have to initiate a scan. This is something that we do continuously. So every time you come and check your dashboard, what you see right now is correct to this specific moment. By the way, you are able to take a look at what happened 3 months ago and compare the two. So again, when you're going through an audit, it's really easy to show your auditor the improvements that you made throughout the year or throughout the specific period you're checking out. Now, I would actually like to clean this dashboard and show you how I got to see what we're seeing right now. So I just deleted it and I'm going to start it fresh. Here are Solvo's rules that we created and pre-built in our rule engine, but in just a few days, or maybe by the time this video is already aired, it's already live, you can put in your own rules using the OPA project, the Open Policy Agent. This is an open source framework where you can build your own rules depending on your internal regulations or what you want your cloud environment to be compliant for. You can choose specific bundles, you can choose all of them. I'm going to choose all of them for the sake of this demo, I'm going to give the name. And the description. And I will choose all of my accounts. And I'm going to run it. So right now we are activating all of those rules and the bundles, and you can see the progress. This is going to take just a couple of minutes to see all the results. Right now you see that 0 out of 90 rules have been ran, but in just a few minutes we're going to see the whole thing coming to life. While it is running this kind of scan, I'm going to show you our inventory page. So this is our inventory page. It shows you some of the AWS assets that we can help you manage and get their security configuration for. And before, when we looked at the IAM magnifier, we looked at a Lambda function that can do the assume role action. So now I'm going to show you how we eliminate excessive permissions. Instead of going asset by asset and policy by policy, trying to figure out what is excessive and what is not, we have created a product that continuously monitors all of your cloud assets. And instead of taking the existing security policy and trying to maybe remove or maybe adjust what's unnecessary, we just completely create a new security policy that is specifically made for every cloud asset, because we know that every application has a unique context, has a unique need, so we cannot impose the same set of rules on everyone's infrastructure, or two organizations are very different and using Lambda functions in a different way, so we cannot expect their Lambda functions to work in the same way. So in this page I can see all of my Lambda functions in this account, and I can sort them based on severity, looking at critical usually first, and then all the other ones later on. I have one Lambda function here at a high severity that is ready for review. Means that Solvo was able to produce a new security policy for this Lambda. The production of a new security policy is very short. It could be anything between a few minutes to a few hours, but once ready, you will see a ready for review status. And over here, I can see the existing security policy of the Lambda, but before I do that, let me show you something. Based on Solvo's analysis, I can see that this Lambda has access to total AWS services, while it only needs access to 7. So the other are excessive. The Lambda only needs to execute 12 actions, but it can execute more than 600. Here I can see the existing security policy of the Lambda. This is an inline policy created by a naughty developer, lots of wildcards, and an AWS managed policy, which you are all very well familiar with, has a lot of excessive access. When I click on the get policy suggestion over here, this is Solvo's policy, a policy that was created uniquely for this Lambda function. Let me focus on S3 just so that it's not too long of a policy to look at. As you can see, instead of S3 wildcard as we had before, over here I have S3 delete object and S3 get object related not to S3 wildcard, but to a specific resource, a specific bucket in my account, a specific partition, and even a specific file type. While for the put object action, it is associated to a different resource, different partition, and different file type. So this is how a Solvo policy is generated based on the unique needs of every cloud asset. And just before we go, let's take a look back at the compliance page where all the rules have been ran, and we can see the status. We actually saw it before. We can see all of the cloud assets, the severity of their finding, and to which framework are they related. So it's really easy to go ahead and fix those findings. In this case, I have a bucket that is with a critical finding. Patrick, are we done? We are. The time is up. So I will just wrap up by saying that now I know which bucket of mine did not pass this rule that is related to the SOC 2 and ISO. So in this case, you already know what is next. I can take this ARN, put it in the IM magnifier, see the map of access into this specific S3 bucket, and then I can go back to our inventory page, to the S3 button, and get a new security policy for this S3 bucket that is least privileged. We also have an automation, so you actually don't have to do this entire process manually. You can just trigger an automation and get a Slack notification with the new security policy for this S3 bucket. And here I'm going to stop.